Welcome to the College Football X. I'm John Wilkerson. Jon Nelson joins the show later. I think it's going to be a while before a Big 12 program will invite a Sun Belt program to their house. The Sun Belt went 3-0 last Saturday against the Big 12. First, Arkansas State went to the Little Apple and defeated Kansas State 35-31 for the Red Wolves' first win over a Power 5 team in 12 years. Here's the final call of the game from the voice of the Red Wolves, Matt Stoltz, from the EAB Red Wolves Sports Network.
From the A-State 40, A-State leading it 35-31. One final chance for K-State. Skylar Thompson throws deep over the middle. It's incomplete, and the Red Wolves win. A-State has come into Manhattan, Kansas, and knocked off the Wildcats of Kansas State. Our final score, Arkansas State 35, Kansas State 31.
Louisiana head coach Billy Napier said after the Iowa State game that, quote, "You can't underestimate a Sun Belt Conference team anymore. It's become a normal thing. You put a Sun Belt team on your schedule and you better watch out," unquote. Well, Iowa State found that to be a true statement, as the Raging Cajuns pulled off a 31-14 win over the Cyclones. Here's UL's final score, called by Jay Walker and Gerald Broussard from ESPN 1490 KPEL.
Hand off to Regis.
Oh, don't do them like that. Oh, raise your hands, Bird.
Raise your hands. Raise your hands. Touchdown, Louisiana.
Thank you, at least. Finally. Golly. Now, that's the way you exclamation.
Yep.
That's the way you exclamation.
That's the way you finish the puppy off.
Then Saturday night, the Sun Belt completed the 3-0 sweep of the Big 12 Conference as Coastal Carolina defeated the Kansas Jayhawks in Lawrence 38-23 in front of no fans at David Booth Kansas Memorial Stadium, a venue the Chanticleers are 2-0 in. So pardon KU if they don't want anything to do with Coastal again. And with more on the Chanticleers going coastal in Lawrence, Kansas against the Jayhawks, here's Jon Nelson.
And one of our X Factors this past week comes from Coastal Carolina. And it was Coastal Carolina. It was Coastal after dark, or maybe it was KU after dark. And by the time that Coastal Carolina left Lawrence, Kansas, KU was in the dark. Big win for Coastal Carolina. The play-by-play voice of Coastal's with us, Joe Cashion. Joe, thanks for hanging out with us here on the X.
Hey, thanks, John, for having me on and giving me an opportunity to talk about a great win last Saturday in Kansas. It was fun.
So what was travel like? I know that we're all in a new normal here, but what was travel like getting out there?
That's an interesting question because I didn't exactly go with the team. I think the team, you got to wear masks and you've got to be screened and all this kind of stuff. And the travel party for the team going out there was significantly less than what it normally is in number of players, support personnel, staff, and whatnot, administrators. It's not as big as it used to be just to try to keep people apart on a plane. That part I was, fairly familiar with. I knew that's what they were going to do. I actually went out on a separate flight, on a commercial flight. I had to go separately from them because I don't live close enough to the campus to where I could get in there and test all 3 times per the Big 12 protocol. So, they set me up with a commercial flight, and I got out there late Friday night and kind of stayed on my own, and actually sat on Sunday morning after about 90 minutes worth of sleep after winning the game and then driving back from Lawrence to MCI close to the airport. I mean, I got like maybe 90 minutes and it was back to the airport and back on planes. And the team didn't actually return until Sunday afternoon. I mean, that was the weird thing. I was back in South Carolina long before they even got on the charter to come back. So it actually kind of worked out for me. So anyway, it was an interesting weekend with all the travel arrangements that had to be worked out.
You're not kidding. And I mean, when you saw this game on the board, knowing that everything we're getting into this season, what did you think about the matchup? A lot of folks sit there, and I will say this, a lot of folks that don't pay attention to life in the Sun Belt will take a Sun Belt team and they'll put it against a team from a Power 5, and they'll sit there and they'll throw their hand in the air and they'll go, ah. But if you sleep on the Sun Belt, you get to see what happens, and you saw it with a lot of other teams in the Sun Belt. You got to see it with Coastal. You cannot sleep on Sun Belt teams anymore.
you saw that exact reaction from everybody on game day when they went through their pick'ems. I mean, they just dismissed us out of hand like we weren't even supposed to step on the same field with the Hat and KU, even though we had beaten them last year in Lawrence. I mean, it wasn't a big shock, that we weren't a huge underdog in this game. I think maybe 6 or 7 going in. I mean, that was it. I mean, but they just dismissed us out, just like you said. It's Coastal. They're going to lose the Big 12. The heck with these guys. But when I saw the matchup, I thought, okay, I mean, they were supposed to have come to us this season as part of the 3-game deal. We played 2 in Lawrence, they play 1 in Conway. They were supposed to come to us at the end of September. And then, of course, everything hit and schedules had to be reworked. And the Big 12 said, okay, we're going to go the 9+1. If we're going to play a non-conference game, they have to come to our schools to play. And so we thought, okay, you know what, we'll just flip it. We'll go there to start. And when I heard that agreement had been made, I thought, this gives us an opportunity to go be competitive. I didn't think we'd do, get out 28-0 and that kind of thing. But I thought, we've got a legit shot here. We've got a lot of guys coming back, and I feel really good about going out there, and playing these guys. I thought they might be a little more amped up, perhaps, them against us, knowing that we'd beaten them. And, of course, we had the piñata in the locker room, and that got a lot of play. But we came out as the aggressors, and we were the better football team.
I was going to say, I mean, the passing game seemed like it has been out there for 5 or 6 games, not just 1 or 2. I mean, and you really got to victimize that secondary and that Kansas defense pretty much all day long.
I think it really helped us to have gotten through a complete spring practice where I don't think KU – I'm not even sure they got 1 practice in. I'm not even sure they got off – they got off the launch pad in terms of spring practice. We got all of our spring practice in and finished up the Thursday before, the week COVID shut everything down. So I really, really think it helped us to have been able to do that, especially from some guys that, we debuted really for the first time. Our starting quarterback, Grayson McCall, redshirt freshman, he was fantastic the other night, throwing the football, making all the right decisions, running it when he needed to. Guy in the secondary, Jordan Strong, our starting cornerback, he came from the JUCO ranks. He got in January, and we were able to get him into spring ball. We got Jeff Gunner back. He transferred out after 2018 after a all Sun Belt year. He goes to NC State. It doesn't work out. He comes back. We get him into spring ball in a little bit of a different position. So a lot of these guys we were able to kind of figure out and fit in, and get those reps in this spring. I think that helped. I really think we were at game speed and ready to hit and play, maybe a little more than they were.
Joe Cashion, the play-by-play voice of Coastal Carolina, hanging out with us here on the X, on the OSG, on CFB. And going into the second half, it seemed like there was a moment there in the third quarter where Kansas looked like they might have awakened, but full credit to Coastal, you came back and you shut the door on them third and fourth quarter late.
We had a chance, and we talked about this before going into halftime. We had a chance, I thought, to really kind of double down on those guys because we had the ball late in the first half. Now, of course, they went out and they kicked a field goal on the last play of the half right after we scored a touchdown. So they felt a little, momentum going into the locker room. We came out and didn't do anything on our first possession. They took that first possession they had of the second half. They went 15 plays, 85 yards, and over 8 minutes off the clock. And Lane Harris is my analyst. We're partners on there. And I just looked at him. I thought, that's fine. They want to take this time off. There was no sense of urgency. They want to take that time off the clock and do that. That's okay. We just didn't want to give up the big one. They did pull to within 28-17, but then, we responded with a big-time drive that we had to go get some points to kind of stave them off after they got to within 11. I thought that showed the resiliency and character of our team. We didn't, we never folded under that heat where Kansas was trying to come back. And I felt like they certainly picked it up a notch or several, in the second half. They had a good, I would just assume, tongue lashing in halftime. You're down 28-3. Who are these guys again? And you're getting beat like this?
Eric Dreyer comes out, and yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But, your point is well taken. We responded when we had to, did the things we had to, went and scored, and then, held them off at the end and went on to the win.
When you look at this season, I guess, from 30,000 feet, What are you anticipating when it comes to Coastal Carolina football this year? I mean, realistically, expectations are one thing. 2020 comes in and she kind of bumps you a little bit and knocks you off your pins. What are the expectations with a signature win like this again in this season, which is in a new normal?
I do normal is right. And looking at it from 30,000 feet, that is a great question because if we can get through all 11 games, which is no guarantee, and it's the craziest thing you've ever seen, if we can get through 11 games, I think 6 or 7 wins is absolutely doable, especially having gotten this first one. We have Campbell coming in Friday night. Now, they gave Georgia Southern a big-time run, so they certainly have our full attention. If we can get that one and start 2-0, and then we've got a bye week before Arkansas State. They're at home. We'll get them at home, get into the Sun Belt Conference, get some of these games at home, and, who knows, wind up at Liberty in December. I think 6 or 7 wins is certainly doable, certainly within the realm of possibility for this football team this year. But, again, it's a week-to-week thing like we've never seen before, like we've never experienced. We get one guy that gets sick and, we might have 2 or 3, and the next thing you know, those tentacles start reaching out and the contact tracing starts. I mean, you see what happened with Ark State and Central Arkansas this coming week. I mean, I think 13 games now. I think I read a little while ago that 13 have been postponed to, pushed back, or they may have to be canceled, but who knows. But if everything holds, we can get through this 11-game schedule. I think 6 or 7 wins. That's my expectation.
So knowing that you are a yacht rock aficionado,
well, I don't know about aficionado. I just like the music. I mean, if you're going to ask me something really serious, I probably wouldn't be able to answer it. I mean, there's certain artists that I like, but I'll give it a shot.
Well, then, of the artists that you like that are yacht rockian in nature, what song title and what artist best fits what happened in Lawrence, Kansas this past week?
Oh goodness, that is one I don't know that I could even. Who knows? I mean. Well, John, you got me on that one. I'd have to think long and hard. I mean, what Steely Dan song would apply to that? I don't know. I mean, because I really like Steely Dan a lot. I like listening to him, or Michael McDonald. When I think of yacht rock songs, I try to turn it on. Those are people that I like to listen to. But
Well, okay. So if you want to go down,
help me out a little bit here.
Here was an idea. You mentioned Michael. You mentioned Michael McDonald. Let's go back to College Game Day and what they were saying about Coastal Carolina. What about What a Fool Believes?
I would apply that to Kirk and to Lee and David Pollock and all these guys. I'm like, come on, guys. Going back to that, I'm like, okay, I get it. I get it if you think that KU is going to win. They've got the hat and they're the Big 12. I got all that. But, I mean, hey, how about a little credit here, I mean, how about saying, okay, that they're Coastal. We don't know much about it, but we think they might have a shot. They won last year. Who knows? I mean, they could go out there and do something again, today. But, what a fool believes. I like if you use that application. Yeah, I would go with that.
Or how about this from Steely Dan? Do it again.
Okay, yeah. I like that.
Two that
one more time, Yep. Got them again, so.
All right. Well, okay, my last question for you, and thanks for hanging out. What has the vibe been like in the Coastal Carolina atmosphere since the win happened back in Lawrence? Since the vibes are socially distanced, what has it been like? What has the feedback been like and the overall vibe ever since the win got put on the board?
That's a good question because of the social distancing. I mean, with everybody having to meet and, you got to kind of stay apart from each other. The vibe I get on social media is certainly just phenomenal. I mean, it's just like, and just from a personal standpoint, me seeing and hearing these different talk shows talking about us. I mean, there's a show in Charlotte, Mark Packer's show. I mean, he talks to people all over the country. I mean, I've turned that show on 3 days in a row. He's talking about the Sun Belt. He had our commissioner on the other day talking about the Sun Belt. Now, when would that have ever happened? Because, the Sun Belt won those 3 big games against the Big 12 the other day. Had Cole Kubelic on the other day. he's going to be at our game Friday night, and Cole Kublik, and he talking about us, talking about Coastal, and just hearing people talking about us and getting that kind of publicity, I've never heard that before, and it's one of the byproducts of these conferences that have bailed out. Of course, now you got the Big 12 they're going to get back into this thing as of today. But one of the great things for us in terms of some of these conferences that have decided to hold off, we're getting opportunities on national television that we've never, on linear TV, that we've never had. FS1 late the other night. Who would have thought that? And then, of course, Friday night, we're on the big ESPN. We're on big ESPN. We're going to be the only game in town on TV Friday night. And so I just think getting that kind of exposure, that vibe, that excitement, not only being there, but winning, beating at Kansas, I think it's just from what I've been able to, to kind of discern and, read and hear, I think it's been fantastic. I love it.
Joe Cashion, the play-by-play voice of Coastal Carolina. You got the Duke against Kansas this past week, and we'll be keeping an eye on things, especially with the U being the only game in town going up against it. So it's Campbell's and Chanticleers coming up this weekend when it comes to Game 2. Joe, thanks for hanging out with us on the X, and continued luck this season at Coastal, and be safe, sir.
John, thanks so much for having me on. Enjoyed it.
When we come back, the X continues with Wilkie. Stick and stay. We'll be right back.
The OSG Sports app is up and running on your Android or iPhone. All you got to do, install the OSG Sports app and listen to our podcast from college football, soccer, lacrosse. What are you waiting for? Let's get this done. Get the OSG Sports app today.
And welcome back to the X. John Wilkerson, joined by Chris Mooneyham from 680 The Fan in Atlanta, the flagship station of the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets. Chris, the Jackets are 1-0.
That's what. All right, just right there. That's just where. And you know what? That's the bluntness of your lead-in is enough to speak so many measures. I was laughing during the week. For those that weren't with us last week, I did stop just short of saying Georgia Tech was going to win this football game, didn't I? You did. I don't mind hammering myself when I'm wrong. I think I'm in the minority in the talking head business. I don't mind hammering myself when I'm wrong. So, every once in a while I'll take the opportunity to pat myself on the back. And I did admittedly see that I thought Georgia Tech had the opportunity to step up in this ball game and keep it close. I did not think that they would win the ball game, obviously. No one did. I was about to say not many did, but obviously no one did. But I was surprised that they won the football game. I was surprised by their resilience. There are a million different things that we could break down in this ball game, but I think it's appropriate to begin with their resilience. 20 minutes to play in the ball game. They had, yardage-wise, outplayed Florida State, but of course had, I guess at that point, 3 blocked kicks. And they were trailing 10-0. Again, with 20 minutes to play, they outscored them 16-3 the rest of the way, win the football game. And Georgia Tech, unlike last year, looked like a real live FBS football program.
You had to feel for Jude Kelly, though. A couple of blocked field goals, a blocked extra point, but Tech put themselves in a position to win. And when he had to deliver the big kick, he did.
Yes. You know what, though? I am a guy, for those that don't know me out there who are listening to your podcast, and I'm sure 99% of the audience does not know me, I cover the gamut of sports at all levels, professional, collegiate, and high school sports. And that's one of my big trades here in Metro Atlanta. And I have actually covered Jude Kelly at the high school level. He played his high school ball at Alatoona High School, and he was a very, quote-unquote, highly recruited kicker, as much as kickers can be. He rated very high in those kicking camps with the Coles guy and so on and so forth. He was a really, and I mean a really clutch, successful, big-legged, big-leagued type high school kicker. Obviously, as a true freshman, you worry about his confidence going into that. But to a man, his coaches and his teammates said that they weren't worried whatsoever going into that last kick that he was able to knock down and to continue on in the ball game, continue that comeback. A massive win for Georgia Tech. Again, I made the tongue-in-cheek comment that they looked like I'm a real live boy. They looked like a real live FBS program light years ahead of last year, and now the Vegas line will be pushed. I mentioned that last week. There's no way this was only a 3-win team. They're going to lay some eggs the rest of the year, John. I mean, let's face it. They're still building this thing. They're going to lose to some teams that they probably shouldn't lose to. But I wouldn't be surprised if they pull off another upset somewhere along the road.
We look at the Florida State perspective, and it's easy to throw dirt on Florida State. It was a tough performance in front of the what was home fans that were at the stadium in Mike Norvell's debut. But you got to look at it this way: with all the craziness with COVID, they didn't have a spring practice to put in Mike Norvell's offense or the defense that they were installing. And it looked that way with James Blackman. His timing was off. The offensive line at times broke down. I think it's better than they have been years past, but it's still not a cohesive unit. It's easy to throw dirt on Florida State, but there were some factors. Guys haven't really been concentrating on football. It's been trying to avoid doing the COVID testing and really unity marches. It really wasn't until the week of the game is when football was concentrated on.
Yeah, I do agree with that, but while I'll not throw dirt on them, to use your phrase, I will pull the shovel out of the dirt and kind of prop it up on my shoulder and get ready to do just that. Just because, their leading rusher was the backup quarterback, the kid they brought in, Travis, who saw about 10 snaps in the ball game. And they have had questions along the offensive line during this off season, and trying to figure out what that rotation is going to be. They were just north of 100 yards, I think, rushing in totality in the ball game.
Yeah.
They had too many really costly penalties. I think they only ended up with 7. I should pull up the box score here, and I'll do that while we're talking so I can get some of these numbers exactly right, although I'll be very close. They had probably 7 to 9 penalties, so not too many, but 3 or 4 of them were extremely costly. And then, of course, there's the turnovers. And to go back to what you talked about with Norvell, here's my thing about that. Remember all the upheaval that they had at numerous times. That they had
right.
2 different situations between players and the coaching staff during the offseason. I think that played into it. And I got a couple of guys down in North Florida who were around the program, one guy in particular in Tallahassee, who tells me that this thing already is kind of hanging on a thread. The guys want to believe in Mike, but they just don't know for sure with everything else that's been going on, much like how they feel about Blackman right now. You brought him up. He did not have a great ball game. South of 200 yards passing. Now I've got the numbers pulled up here. 23 of 43 for 198, a touchdown and 1 interception. And this game was much like what you've seen out of Blackman throughout his career. Flashes. Flashes good and flashes bad.
Well, the other thing, too, you bring up the rushing yards. Florida State just doesn't have the home run hitter in the backfield they've had in the past with the Cam Akers and the backs that Jimbo Fisher had when he was head coach. We're talking to Chris Mooneyham, from 680 The Fan in Atlanta. That's the flagship station of the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets, the official fan station of the Georgia Bulldogs. It's kind of interesting. Well, as we record this, we have learned that the Big Ten Conference is going to have a season starting in October 24th. So, what took them so long?
Well, you know what? I'm going to do? I'm going to do something I never do. I'm going to pat myself on the back twice in one broadcast.
Please. That's what this podcast
Well,
is for.
My producers never pat me on the back. No, I'm only kidding. That's an inside joke, folks. Jon Wilkerson has spent some time producing me in the past. But in all seriousness, you know what? I did speak last week on, I was wondering what else they needed to see to spur the thought, or not the thought, but to spur the final action of coming back. Whatever it is that they did see, and they can put out the official press releases and say whatever they like, but whatever it is that they did see, I'm not going to dive into that, but it is nice that they're coming back. And I probably should be in a better mood about it. I'm not a Big Ten guy. I don't adhere to one conference. I follow the entire country. I cover the entire country. So I should probably be in a better mood about it. But I'm going to tell you, I am still just a tad bit negative, John, and here's the reason why. Why are they waiting until October 24th? They don't need 4 or 5 weeks of ramp up. They really don't. The kids have been on campus. They're conditioned. I know a lot of people are going to disagree with me on this, and I'm a guy who will bend and budge on my points and my opinions if your opinion is different from mine, and I feel like I should, and it warrants it. But I'm going to tell you something. This is not one where I'm going to budge, because these kids are on campus. They're conditioned. They've been in the eating program. They've been in the class program, the study hall program. These kids will be ready to go in 3 weeks. You don't need to wait until the end of October. Having said that, it looks like they're going to get 9 games in, 8 plus a crossover divisional type ball game. That's very interesting if that is, in fact, what we're going to have. And I suppose they feel like 9 games will be enough with whomever is the champion or whichever team is the champion to get them into the college football playoff. And then the conspiracy theorists will say, well, they'd only have to worry about getting 9 games in because the only real team to threaten out of the conference to get into the tournament is Ohio State.
I find it interesting that it appears to have been a unanimous vote to come back and play. And, of course, they put together some stringent medical protocols to go along with that. So, I totally get what you're saying. And it's going to be nice, I guess, to see Michigan and Ohio State play in December rather than watching them play in May.
Yeah, and did I miss it? Have they released, because there's new information coming out, once an hour here, have they announced the schedules yet? Surely we don't have the schedules out yet. I don't believe that they have.
No.
So that'll be interesting.
That will be interesting to see if the traditional rivals, Michigan, Ohio State, play at the end of the year, or will they kind of mess with that a little bit and have them play in the middle of the year, or that'll be interesting. And the schedule makers right now are under the gun. I mean, they've got.
Well, no, I'm sorry. You go ahead.
No, go. You go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, because to contradict myself, just to prove that I'm a both sides of the road kind of guy. That was part of my worry for, say, the ACC and the SEC packing in as many games as they were. I liked that they were starting earlier and that they could allow potentially for a suspension of play 1 week for one team to then potentially make that game up later. You follow me?
I follow.
The Big Ten, the Big Ten will not be able to do that now because they have waited so long and because they're going to start so late. Whereas I would have thought it would have been prudent for these conferences to start as early as possible and build in a bye week, or if you could, maybe even 2 bye weeks in the back half of the season, maybe the last week. Have the last week of the regular season be a bye week before the conference championship games, maybe if that's what you prefer. Now the Big Ten is leaving themselves absolutely no wiggle room.
You're right, but it's good to see the Big Ten teams actually going out and playing, and something we didn't think we were going to see, and we have. Chris is going to stick around for one more segment. We'll take a break. You're listening to the College Football Act. The OSG Sports app is up and running on your Android or iPhone. Install the OSG Sports app and listen to our podcast from college football, soccer, and lacrosse. What are you waiting for? Get the OSG Sports app today. We're wrapping up the College Football X. Chris Mooneyham from 680 The Fan in Atlanta is with me. Sticks around for another segment. It won't reflect in your paycheck, unfortunately. When you look around the landscape of college football, the limited games there are, there's just not that many attractive matchups. In fact, Louisville and Miami it looks like the game of the week.
Yeah, and I mean, I am absolutely interested in it. You're right. I think they'll have a monopoly on the ratings. People will be sitting around waiting for that game potentially. What's that? A 7:30 kickoff at in
on
Louisville.
ABC. It's the primetime game on ABC.
Yeah, so that'll be big time, and I'm looking forward to it as well. Another chance to see De'Aaron King as he continues to try to settle in, see if he can develop that passing game a little bit more. He was electric athletically last time out, obviously. Louisville, interesting. Can they get either side of the ball really going to where they can be dominant this year? Where will Louisville fit into the upper echelon, if they're upper echelon of the ACC? So I'm looking forward to that ball game. I'm bummed that we're not getting Virginia Tech, quite frankly. I know I should focus on the games that are playing, but I can't help but mention that as well.
I'm bummed too. That's a great matchup.
It really is. And if you love college football like we do, and the rivalries, and I know you've had that rivalry series podcast in the past, man alive, you probably have talked about that game every year. If you don't know the game, you haven't followed that matchup, it's so fiery. There's so much depth to it. But we'll not get that one. BYU and Army was supposed to play this weekend, so the pickings are slim. But we do have some middle-tier, really interesting matchups to choose from. We will get another look at Notre Dame coming up this week, who now has moved all the way up to number 7 in the poll.
Yeah, and Georgia Tech UCF interests me too, because they're going to see that up-tempo offense that Josh Heupel has with the Knights, and that might be an early wake-up call to that G-Tech defense. And I'm also looking at Pitt and Syracuse because, I keep hearing that how Pittsburgh is kind of a sleeping, well, I don't want to say sleeping giant, but kind of one of those in the weeds type of team that could come up and bite you in the backside. And they had a big win as far as points last week. Syracuse is a program that's kind of reeling right now. The game's at Heinz Field, an empty Heinz Field. That game kind of interests me because I want to see if Pitt's that good, or is Syracuse that bad?
Wow. If those are our two choices, I'll probably have to go the Syracuse route. I think Syracuse is a team this year that is going, that's the prime type of team that could be upset, quote unquote, on a money line versus Georgia Tech, for instance, what we were talking about earlier. I think that's absolutely the type of team that could get upended by a lower tier team inside of the ACC. I don't know that Pitt is quite that good. It was Austin Peay after all, whom they beat 55-0. No offense to Austin Peay faithful out there who are listening, because I know we have a ton of them. But I need to see more from Pittsburgh, just as you said. I got to see more before I can really believe in it.
And of course, name your score with Clemson and the Citadel on Saturday.
Let's go with not as much of a blowout as you would imagine.
Because Trevor Lawrence won't play past the second quarter.
Well, sure, he definitely will not play this. I don't think he'll play the second half. But the Citadel is one of those teams. If they can control the tempo early, you'll be surprised that it will only be 10-0 with about 2 minutes left in the first quarter. Then you see a 24-point second quarter, and it's 34-6 at the half. I'll say Clemson wins that ball game 45-13. 45-13.
Great stuff, Chris. Appreciate you joining the College Football X podcast. Of course, you'll be a frequent contributor to our podcast, and thanks for taking some time to talk to us.
No, thanks for having me, John. Talk to you next week.
And that'll wrap things up. Until next week, I'm John Wilkerson for Jon Nelson. Enjoy the games this weekend.